Hey guys, what's going on? It's ThatHomeTheaterDude. Got a brand new episode for you today. So first and foremost, I'm going to be going through my settings on the Denon 4400H. A lot of people ask me what my settings are, and I'm not necessarily sure why they ask me for what my settings are, because it's not going to be the same, in your house, and it's not going to be the same in your room. But this is just going to show you what I have for my settings, and also I'm going to walk you through the entire setup of the sounds, or just basically walk you through the entire setup, so that you guys can have a full understanding what these things actually are. So without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and jump into it, okay? So first and foremost, I go into audio, and this is after you've already run Odyssey, right? So you have a couple things over here. You have surround parameter, and I like to keep all this stuff off. The cinema EQ that basically tries to give you like softer treble, so it'll help you understand the vocals a little bit better. And if you have a problem hearing what people are actually saying through your center channel, you might want to turn that on. Center spread, I like to keep it off. This basically tries to, it is exactly what it says. It spreads out your center channel, so it kind of mixes in different parts of your center channel to your left and your right, so that I guess you get a better type of immersion. I'm not necessarily sure why they do that. I keep it off, obviously. I don't mess with any of the rest of the stuff. Odyssey, I go in here. Now, typically whenever you run Odyssey, it's going to be on reference for your multi-EQ. I like to just keep mine on flat. And then I like to keep my dynamic EQ on, because it mixes in what Odyssey feels that it's supposed to be best for your room. And then I leave all the rest of this stuff normal. I don't need to raise it up any or anything like that. Dynamic volume. This basically helps out with say if you're going to be watching this at night, and it'll help you still get your dynamics and not wake the neighbors and stuff like that. And then this is the same thing with the LFC, is that if you're living in an apartment, or you have someone sleeping upstairs, baby upstairs or something like that, then you don't necessarily have that wall shaking type of appeal. It kind of calms that stuff down right here. Next thing I do is I go into my speakers, and like I was saying, this is already after you've run Odyssey. So the way I have mine set up is I have 11.1 channels for the actual assign mode, and you can do this a lot of different ways. Just look at all the different options here. You can do 9 channels, like this thing has 9 channels internally powered. And let's see if I can go ahead and zoom in a little bit better there. Sorry about that. So this thing has 9 channels internally powered. So if you're going to be using all the 9 channels the way it comes, then I would probably recommend using this. And then you can do 7.1, which is typical that you would find with True HD and things like that. And you can also have zones. Zones is whenever you have something playing not necessarily in your same room. So if you want to have some speakers outside, some patio speakers, you can have the Denon, the same AVR playing, and you can have 2 different sources playing in 2 different areas. So you can be watching a movie in here, listen to music outside, whatever. So let's see here. You have biamping mode, and that'll help out if you really want to have biamp speakers. Some people like to do that, some people don't. I'm not doing that right now, but I think I may try it out in the future. And then, like I said, I just leave this on 11.1 channel. It seems to be the easiest way to do it. And then I come down here and I go to my setup. Right now, I'm not using my surround backs because I was using the voice of God, and I didn't run another wire. But I think the way it's set up is I can actually run 11 channels plus the voice of God. So I need to double check it, but whenever I do all my setup and all my Odyssey and everything, it does 12 channels. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be another video that I'm going to be shooting soon. I need to verify that. It's just I need to run one more wire for the voice of God, because I have my room already set up for the rear surrounds, and I pulled one of the rear surrounds cable to run the voice of God. So you can have this on your 5-channel layout or your 7-channel layout, whatever you want. And then up high for height speakers, you can either have 2, none, or 4. Obviously I have 4, and you can see up there right below that main zone, you can see that tiny little speaker right there, and that's the voice of God. So over here you're going to have your layout of your speakers. So you can either have your rear heights or you can have them to where they're right next to you, so right above your surround speakers on the right and left of you. So if you want to have these just pointing right at your ear, you can have it set up like that. So like I have mine in the back, right above my rear surrounds. I like to keep it right here. And then obviously here, if you're going to be running externals, if you're going to be using the 11 channels, there's not 11 channels internally in this AVR, unlike the 63 and 6400 and the 8500. So you have to run externals. So you have to assign your pre-outs that you're going to be using, and then it'll just shift the internal amplifiers to all the rest of the speakers. So I have 3 outlaw amplifiers running my left, center, and right channels, and then I have a Arkham P1000 that has 7 channels that I run everything else. So ideally, I should only have the rear surrounds coming from the Denon, but that's not the way it's wired right now. That's the way it's ultimately going to be wired, but that's just, I wanted to share that. And if you look down here at the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in this video just to show you real quick. But if you look down at the bottom, you see how it says support format. It says Dolby Atmos, dts-x, or 3D. So if you have it set up like this, then you're going to be getting the right type of formats out of it. And the one thing that I didn't discuss here is, like I was talking about that voice of God right there on top, is that channel comes from my subwoofer 2 pre-out. So you can't have dual subwoofers unless you're daisy chaining them with this type of setup. So whenever I have it, it's coming out of subwoofer 2, that pre-out goes into interconnect, that interconnect goes into an amplifier, that amplifier, you know, gets wired up to the actual voice of God channel. So like I was saying, I need to test it, but whenever I do Odyssey and I run Odyssey, it does 12 channels whenever I run it. So I'm thinking that you can get, you know, 11 plus 1 channels, but whenever you're running Odyssey, or whenever you're running Oro 3D, you're going to be having it on 11 channels like that, but you're really only going to be hearing, I think you're really only be hearing the 10 channels. It's just whenever you pop it over between Atmos and everything else like that. Like I said, I need to figure it out because it's kind of bothering me. Other than that, you go into speaker configuration, and then I leave everything as small. Sometimes I leave the fronts on large because these Ultras can take it. But right now I just popped everything over to small, and like I said, I have 1 subwoofer. I took off the surround backs because I'm not necessarily using them right now. They're not even hooked up. But usually I do, so I mean, technically I could just pop those on. And I got 2 speakers. You have the channel opportunity of doing 1. And the reason why you set all these to small is so that you can control the crossovers. If you have all these on large, it's going to give the speaker all the juice that it has, all the frequencies that it has for that specific channel. And whenever you put them on small, you can actually control the crossovers. Let's just go into crossovers real quick. You can actually control the crossovers on all these speakers. So say like these front channels, they go down to like in the 30s for the frequencies. I can have these crossover at 40, and then there's a slope, type of slope. Let's see here if I can do it real quick. Slope, that's not really, there you go, slope, type of cutoff. So if you're looking at a graph, there's going to be an X, and actually this is the Y, this is going to be the X, and there's going to be the actual type of sound you're going to be hearing. So when you have a cutoff, it's not a specific wall. You're going to be, you know, kind of sloping off like I was talking about whenever you're doing that. So I like to set it a little higher than what the speaker demands. So these fronts are in the 30s, so I like to put these at 40. And then the center channel, that's in the 65, 67 range. So I mean, obviously I can't put it on 60, otherwise it'll be, you know, putting out frequencies that it's not supposed to be doing. So I put it on 80. And then I put the surrounds, which are the RP160s. These can go down, I think, to the 30s or the 45s. But, you know, just for the sake of keeping the, you know, horizontal stage accurate, I just put that on 80 as well. Same thing with the surround backs, and then I like to keep all the height channels at the same crossover. So like I was talking about earlier with the Klipsch Atmos modules, you want to have these crossed over a minimum at 150, and Atmos modules and height speakers are completely different. So if you're having ceiling bounce, you want to have them at 150. But if you just have a speaker that you're going to be putting above you, I would recommend, just starting out at 100 and see how you like it. You don't necessarily need the bigger, lower sounds for the height effects, because you're going to be getting those, thunderous crashes and those explosions and everything, and the jets overhead. You're going to be getting that from your subwoofer. So you don't need big bass coming from, your ceiling or your height channels, because it's going to be taken care of with your sub anyway. So basically, these are just set up for mid bass, and that's why I like to keep them, around 100. You can put them down lower if you want, but it's really just up to you. But like I'm saying, if you have a ceiling bounce, I would recommend putting them at 150, because like I talked about in a different video, that you need to have that 150 hertz, because those frequencies below that don't necessarily mix well with the bouncing type of effect. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Another thing you do is you go into the distances. I like to have mine set up to 0.1. And this is all pretty straightforward. It's going to be set up very specifically from your Denon, from Odyssey itself. And you notice how these are like, 0.2 feet difference of each other. And that's pretty good. If you set up your room very accurately whenever you measured everything and you put your speakers in the proper places, you're going to have these very similar in line with each other. And now these rear heights, I didn't measure them up very well, and that's why you see like a half a foot of a difference almost. But yeah, I mean, like 1 or 2, not a big deal. I mean, even half a foot, not a big deal. But if you're really anal about that stuff, then move your speakers and put them in the right position. Levels, all this stuff is taken care of by the actual Odyssey. And if you don't know what Odyssey is, and you don't know what calibration is the way it works is you have a test tone coming out of your speakers, and it varies from this one to that one to this one. And the test tone not only gives you the room characteristics that you have, it'll measure the distance that it took to get from sending the signal to the speaker to having the actual signal come through to the microphone. So that gives you your latency, and that basically just puts a delay on the sound itself, so that every speaker, no matter where you are in the room, they're all hitting your ear at the same time. Because if I were to go in here and set all of these to 10, it would sound very disorienting whenever I'm trying to get a surround sound type of effect, because some things will come before and some things will come after the effect happens on the TV, and that doesn't necessarily sync up to what you want to be experiencing, And then another thing is that whenever you do that time difference, the latency, you need to have every single speaker playing at the same volume, so that if I had the front channel going at -2, which is kind of a higher volume or a higher gain, and then I had say like the rear surround, the one that I don't even have on right now, if I had that above 0, which is above reference is what they call it, or basically it's the middle point, you're going to be having your decent sound coming from here, which is going to be normal. They're going to have a blaring sound right behind you, and that's not what you want. So with this stuff set up the way it's supposed to be, the microphone does all the hard work. If you want to be super anal about this stuff, then you can get an even more specific calibrated microphone, and then you can have it set up in the same spot like as the camera is right now, where your main listening position is, and then you can tweak these. So say if like you get a great sound from here, and then it doesn't match the sound from the left, doesn't match the sound to the right, then you can tweak these to where you can have it -3, you can boost it up higher, whatever you need. But the way my setup is this is all the numbers that came directly from Odyssey. I don't like to mess with this stuff too much. It seems to work pretty good, but like I said, you're super anal about this stuff, you can change it yourself. And that's that. And like I said, with this one, whenever I actually have these rear surrounds connected, and whenever I do Odyssey, it'll do Odyssey for every single channel on here. So you see how top surrounds there? It's not connected right now, and neither are the rear surrounds. So we got 3 speakers that aren't connected. But it'll play signals out of every single one of these on Odyssey calibration and whenever I do this. So it leads me to believe that I still get that 11 channels plus 1. But I mean, like I said, I need to do some further research on that. I covered crossovers, and I think one more thing I need to talk about is on distances. You can go down here below, and you have a whole nother set of distances. If you're doing ceiling bounce speakers, which is called the Atmos speakers, then you have to change your setup. So it gives you an option. Let's see here. Well, I guess it doesn't do it here. But whenever you have Atmos speakers selected on your, what is this thing called? Speaker configuration. Whenever you have these Atmos, oh crap, it's not here. It's in ampersand. Whenever you have these selected down here, see, check it out. Dolby speakers. So I put the heights to none, and I have to change this to Dolby speakers. And these are the ones that I used to have, the RP140 SAs, and those are the ones that sit on top of a speaker or your bookshelf or whatever and bounce off the ceiling. If you have that set up like this, then it's a little bit different. You just have them, you can just change the position of them, same thing I had before. And then the pre-out, you got to change that one as well to match whatever you had before. And then the only thing that's different is that whenever you're doing the distances, it measures the distance from the ceiling. Oh crap, I don't think I saved it right. So it's going to measure the distance from the ceiling itself. All right, so I figured it out. So whenever you have this set up, you want to have you want to change your front heights to none. You want to have your Dolby speakers to 4 channels, and then you're going to exit out of this. You go into your speaker configuration, and then you change this down here, front Dolby to small, back Dolby to small, and then that way you can control everything else. So then you need to have your distances in there, and the thing I was trying to talk about earlier is that the distance here is a little different. So this is going to be your horizontal distance from the actual speaker to your listening position, and then you go into Dolby speaker setup, and then this here, you have to measure the distance from the ceiling to wherever your speaker is. So if they're going to be on top of these speakers or these speakers, you'd measure from the ceiling, you'd measure that distance down to this, and then you would put in that here. And obviously whenever you're doing ceiling bounce speakers, you want to have them to where you have a room that is at least 8 feet, flat ceiling, no fans, and no vaulted ceilings. And I think that's about it. So I think I'm going to go ahead and I got to change everything back to where it was, but the only other thing that I do here is I put LFE plus main, and then I do 120 hertz crossover because I calibrated my subwoofer to be crossed over at 120. So I wanted to keep it pretty close to where it needed to be. Actually, I think I had it cross over at 100 is where I did the calibration, but 120 is a good roll-on to that point, and the graph looked okay before that, so I should be getting a fair amount of bass. And then the reason why you want to have this a little higher than your main speakers is that, like I said, you have the roll-on and then the roll-off of speakers. So this sub is going to be rolling on at 120 hertz-ish, and then your speakers are going to be dying off. Your main speakers, those low frequencies are going to be dying off like around 80-ish. So you want a good, decent overlap, and you don't want to have them to where they're the exact same, because if you do have them the exact same, there's a thing called wave summation in sound, and then whenever waves add together like that, they cancel out that specific frequency. So if you have boomy bass at 120, and then you have nothing, and then you have just normal bass between like 60 and 20 and 10, then there's a reason for that. It's because you need to check your subwoofer and your crossovers. So I think that's about it. That's all that there is for this. And I'm sorry the video got too long, but this is how I have my speaker set up at my house. If you guys like these videos, let me know. This one was a long time coming. People kept asking me for it. So don't forget to subscribe. Check out my Facebook page. Really enjoy you guys going over there. If you guys want these videos first before they even hit YouTube, go to that Facebook page. Make sure you like it, follow it, and I think that's about it. Catch you guys next time.